Hey, it's the Legless Amputee Beauty here tonight to read chapter 2 of my book. Last night we read chapter 1, which was, let's do a recap, generational curses. Talked about how I got raped by my uncles, and all that bad stuff. So this is my book, From Tragedy to Triumph. I lost my legs to recover my life. And I am going to read my book to you. We are going to do chapter 2, Watch and Pray. Here we go. Told you we're going to read a chapter every night. This is the Legless Amputee Beauty, author Kathy Holmes. That's me. I wrote this book in 2014, and it is still relevant today because it is happening to a lot of men and women as well. So, this is the chapter, Watch and Pray. Here we go. Chapter 2, Watch and Pray. And the verse that I had to go with this is, Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Watch your children. Here I go. My teenage years were so difficult and confusing. I became a defensive and anxious young girl. The fear and frustration I had experienced as a young girl revealed itself by restraining a greater part of my mental conception. The sexual abuse affected my ability to express my emotions to people. I was apprehensive about telling anyone the thoughts that plagued my mind because my uncle said I would get in trouble if I shared any part of the sexual abuse they subjected me to with anyone. I never revealed the abuse. Normally, abused people always protect their abusers. Remember that. The secret weighted heavily on me. The knowledge polluted my mind, my body, and my mind. The memories were impossible to carry. They plagued my thoughts, wanting to forget. I started trying to hurt myself. I started trying to commit suicide at the age of 7 years old. I was trying to kill myself early because I wanted this pain to end. I used to take Tylenol. To this day, I can't even take Tylenol because I was trying to commit suicide. So Tylenol that does nothing for me. Anyway, wanting to forget, I started trying to hurt myself. It started as a young teenager when I had enough money. I would go buy an over-the-counter drug and take half a bottle trying to commit suicide. It seemed like suicide was the easiest way out of the cruel world. At least that is what Satan had me thinking at a young age. Since suicide failed, I reasoned perhaps someone spiritual, at least someone or something, could see what was going on with me. Yes, it was wishful thinking, because in reality, no one was watching. Finally, my mother started sending us to church with our grandmother, and I took up an interest in singing, something I enjoyed doing. Singing always had a calming effect on me, even if it was just for a brief moment. I sang lead in the youth choir and eventually other surrounding churches. For the first time in my life, I felt alive again. The sexual abuse was behind me, and life seemed all right. I made friends at church, and we hung out at the youth pastor's house often. He and his wife made us comfortable enough to talk about anything. Watch out for predators. The youth pastor was especially welcoming. Out of all the teenagers I stayed at their house the most, it felt like a trusting environment for me. Perhaps they were an image of the parental relationship that I did not have with my parents, and I was drawn to it. Because of the parental void in my life, I clung to whoever might accept me into his or her life. I just wanted love and acceptance. As I spent more time with the youth pastor and his family, I finally arrived at the point where I began sharing with them how my uncle sexually abused me, how they raped me. When you put a penis in a child's mouth, that is rape. That is not sexual abuse. That's rape. A sadness came over their faces when I shared my story. On several occasions, the youth pastor asked for details about the sexual abuse. That's how predators start off. He began wanting to know, did I enjoy what my uncles did to me? I told him no, but I began to have a strange feeling inside, thinking it was odd for him to ask that question. As time went on, it appeared his inquiry alluded from something other than genuine concern. There were days that I practiced singing and doing music arrangement for church at the youth pastor house. On one particular night, his wife headed off to church, leaving me alone to rehearse with the youth pastor. While she was gone, he began to ask more questions that were explicitly sexual. One question led to another until he asked a question that exposed his reason for wanting the specific details about what had happened to me. Would you like me to do oral sex on you? He asked. I don't care, I replied. I was already damaged goods. My uncle showed me at 5 years old that it was perfectly acceptable for an adult male to sexually abuse me. They had told me that was their method of displaying love to me. With this perverted definition of love in my mind, I did whatever the youth pastor told me to do. Lie on the bed. I want to show you how receiving oral sex feels. Let me introduce you to something you have never felt before, the youth pastor said. This was something new to me because my uncles never performed oral sex on me. They always made me do it to them when I was 5 years old. After oral sex, the youth pastor had intercourse with me, taking away my virginity, which he didn't take away my virginity. His brother, the one that I didn't write in the book, took away my virginity. I never wrote about him in the book because I was ashamed, but I'm not ashamed anymore. Secrets keep you in bondage, so I'm not ashamed anymore. The youth pastor was after his brother. So when you read my next book, which I'm working on, you will hear about it. It was his brother who took my virginity, and the youth pastor just helped. He was completely in control of the situation and made sure not to ejaculate inside of me because he did not want to take chances on me getting pregnant. Once again, I found myself hiding something horrible that happened to me, believing I might get in trouble if I told anyone. I figured, why waste my time telling anyone? So I had another secret on top of other secrets I carried within me. The abuse with my uncle stopped only to begin once more with the youth pastor 4 years later. Pretty soon, this abuse began happening every day with the youth pastor because I started meeting him every morning before school. I left my house at 5 a.m. every day, walking along a dark road to meet him at a corner at the end of the road. I didn't realize I could have been raped while walking to be raped by him every morning. An adult male having sex with a 13-year-old child is rape in the state of Florida. I lived in Florida then. It is rape because the law says a 13-year-old girl cannot consent to having sex with an adult male. In addition, it becomes statutory rape in Florida if the minor is between 16 and 17 years old. I did not know this at the time, and it took me a long time to learn this. During this time, my mother never checked or inquired into why I left home so early in the morning. Strange happenings like this should always alarm parents to question their children. The sex abuse happened so often that the more he performed oral sex on me, the more I enjoyed it, what he was doing to me. It caused me to keep a secret that I thought was my fault. It took me years to understand that my body was just instinctively reacting as God intended to be. Our bodies are designed to enjoy sex. But the fact that I was enjoying it felt like I was incompliant. Our youth choir traveled often to sing at surrounding churches, and the youth pastor served as the minister of music, so he was on all the trips. While visiting these churches several times, the youth pastor would tell me to leave the church and meet him on the church bus so he can continue his sexual acts on me. Clearly, the leaders of these churches did not discern what was happening. On the other hand, maybe they did. Maybe they saw him and just didn't care. Whether someone saw something or even suspected something, the youth pastor never seemed to give it a second thought as to when or where he would abuse me. he would want to have relations with me in the church, on the bus, or even in his home. The youth pastor followed me just like my uncles followed me. Every time my mother moved, it was as if he was addicted to a drug, and his drug of choice was having sex with a child. On several occasions, the church youth would stay at his sister's house for sleepovers. The youth pastor showed up just to have sex with me after everyone went to sleep. The abuse happened around my grandmother, my mother, his wife, and now church leaders. No one watched out for my well-being. No one seemed to see what was going on, or if they did see, they never took the time to voice their concern. I remember one time an older woman from church telling me to quit being a fast little girl. That's what they called you back in the days, fast little girls. They didn't ask you what was going on. They just called you fast little girls. She never took the time to inquire into what was suspected. Instead, the woman just assumed I was fast. Her statement makes me believe she saw what was going on with me, but it was easier to call me a fast little girl than to question the adults she saw surrounding around me often. She told me that I would not dare tell. After she told me that, I would not dare tell an adult what was going on because eventually they would blame me. Sadly, I was considered an adult too early because my childhood was being stripped from me at a young age. At one point, my aunt did notice the youth pastor's behavior around me. She approached me and asked me if he was having sex with me. My reply was no. Rather than tell what was happening, I was protecting my abusers as he continued to destroy my life. When abuse goes on for a long time, the abused will often protect the abusers, and that's what I was doing. Sexual abuse becomes a way of life. Sexual abuse became a way of life for me. It seemed like grown men loved touching my young body, until one night when I stayed at the youth pastor's house and his wife's house to babysit the kids. It was one typical church night for them, and I babysat their kids on several occasions. As the time approaches for time to leave for church business, the youth pastor decided to stay home and rest. His wife did not have a concern with him staying home because she believed everything he said. After she left, he didn't waste any time telling me to take my clothes off and wait for him in the bedroom. As I laid on the bed naked, his wife came back home unexpectedly. I've always wondered if she noticed something that caused her to come back home. Perhaps she suspected something this time. I heard her coming down the hallway and she found me in her bed naked in the bed. She asked why was I in bed. I just looked at her and pulled back the blanket. She pulled back the blanket and saw that I was naked. After seeing me naked, she asked me, did her husband have sex with me? I told her that nothing sexual had happened that night, which was the truth. However, I never told her about him raping me every day. His wife told me to put my clothes on, and would talk about it in the morning. Meanwhile, she tried to make her husband come out from a place he sought refuge under the baby crib. He was hiding from his wife under the baby crib after being caught. I heard her trying to get him to come out all night long. Was he hiding from shame? On the other hand, seeking pity so she would feel sorry for him. Whatever his reason was, his motive was not pure. The next morning she told me to come and sit on the sofa in the living room, both of them staring at me as if I had done something wicked. They both told me I had a lust demon and needed praying out. His wife went on to say I was responsible for her husband's behavior, and shockingly, he agreed. Tragically, I believe everything they told me. So on Sunday morning, I headed off to church with them. They told the pastor of the church that I had a lust demon and needed to be rid of it. I began to ponder if when they told the pastor I had a demon, did they stretch the truth? Then again, no one could see anyway. So there I was, surrounded in a prayer circle of ministers, getting a lust demon cast out of me. There the youth pastor sat on the organ, looking innocent, with a relief on his face. I said, they have the wrong one in the prayer circle. The youth pastor has the lust demon. Obviously, no one else thought so. Because they did not listen, I guess it was easier to embarrass a child in front of the whole church than to expose the real demon sitting on the organ. Why did they put me in front of the church to humiliate me? No one found it strange that a teenager would express something to such a particular degree. The church leaders confirmed what I was feeling, that no one was watching. After the humiliation, I wanted nothing to do with God. Why did God allow men to touch my young body? Doesn't God see it's making me feel dirty? I thought, how can I ever be clean again? Did God see me being accused unfairly? Why did this little girl suffer so hard and early? Those were the questions in my young mind. After all of the abuse, the chances of my life being successful were thin, and being in healthy relationships would be very difficult. The abuse stopped with the youth pastor at 14 years old and when his wife called him. Afterwards, my father finally walked back into my life thinking he can put me on the right track despite not knowing my emotional state. I turned to him and tried to have a relation with him. It was not long before he abandoned me again. He took me into a drug-infested neighborhood to live with his sister in Miami, Florida. Then he left. When he left, life got worse. I began hanging with people who meant me no good, and I was trying to fit in with the popular crowd. As time went on, I became involved with a drug dealer who physically and mentally abused me as a teenager. As a result, I was pregnant at the age of 15, giving birth at 16, and I was having babies like clockwork every year. My life was headed down a dark, destructive road very fast. I also started experimenting with drugs in an effort to try to escape the pain and shame in my life. However, the drugs did not have a desired effect at all. Continue to remember my shame. Sadly, Child Protective Services took my children because I did not care for them responsibly. My grandmother took my 5 kids and helped raise them until I did everything Child Protective Services required to get my children back. After that occurred with Child Protective Services, I left drugs alone and realized life was simply getting worse for me. Finally, after 6 years of an abusive relationship and pregnant with twins, I had the courage to walk away from their father. After the twins were born, Protective Service returned my children back to me. I later learned while they were in my grandmother's custody that one of my male cousins sexually abused 4 of my children. Sadness filled my heart knowing that my children suffered the same abuse as I did in my grandma's house. I got them rightfully help and pressed charges against my cousins. However, my family members disagreed and denied what had happened to my children. And most families, they keep sexual abuse hidden inside the family because they do not want people to say the family is dysfunctional, and it was very dysfunctional. It created a rift in the family. Nevertheless, some secrets need to be exposed for healing process to begin. At this time, I was 24 years old, a mother of 7 with no intent of marrying their father. I had no job, no education, dropped out of high school, and no direction in my life. I wondered, could life ever have something positive to offer me? Maybe if the adults responsible for me spent more time watching and praying for me, life could have been different. It takes time for an abuser to establish a relationship of trust with a child or a teenager, especially if it's in someone outside of your family. A sex offender can be a close friend, a coach, a pastor, a teacher, or anyone you interact with every day. They pick their victims and gravitate to a child that is quiet and passive. They rarely target a vigorous, outspoken child. The sexual predator noticed these characteristics in me as a child. I was shy, abandoned by my father, and lonely. I was considered damaged goods because my uncles had sexually abused me at 5 years old. My family was full of sexual predators. My father and mother marriage was unhealthy, and there was no example of genuine love. I had a parental void in my life, and the youth pastor noticed it, him and his brother, enabling them to become skillful at raping me. For a complete list of what sexual predators look for in children, visit www.policeone.com. I was among predators in my grandmother's house as well as church. Here are some characteristics to be aware of to recognize sex offenders and sexual predators. Single adults who work, volunteer with children activities and youth groups who don't have children in those groups. Adults who want to take your children on special outings often. Adults that plan activities that include being alone with your child. Adults who engage in frequent contact with children, touching, wrestling, or a child sitting on their lap. Adults who seem preoccupied with children. Adults that your children seem to like for reasons you don't understand. Adults who are always available to watch your kids. Visit www.oprah.com for a complete list of characteristics. The best advice I can give parents is to watch adults that give your children an extravagant amount of attention. Most importantly, watch and pray as the Word of God teaches us. Watching and praying are important when it comes to protecting our children. Unfortunately, my mother sent us to church every Sunday, thinking that was a safe place for us, which turned out to be an unsafe. My mother was trying to introduce us to Jesus Christ the best way she knew how. I'm sure she had no idea the youth pastor would be raping her 13-year-old daughter every day. She trusted the leaders of the church to pray and watch over her children, which ended up being bad judgment on her part. Often we trust people at a level that is reserved only for God. Because of this, we give dangerous people our undeserved trust. We must use practical observation with the naked eye and be more attentive with the spiritual eye. Trusting people too much shows you are not really watching. Always remember, predators lurk where no one is watching. And gain trust and access to your children. I encourage all adults to stay alert and protect your children at all costs. While not everyone is out to do children harm, just follow the wise saying, trust but verify. Trust but verify. That's what you do. You trust but you verify. I was raped. Psychologists say that a child that has been raped multiple times, they grew up being raped over and over and over and over again. And you're going to read that in the next chapter about me being raped as a young adult as well. But I'm good today. I'm the Legless, Amputee Beauty. And don't forget to get my book right here, From Tragedy to Triumph. I lost my legs to recover my life. Sexual abuse took a lot away from me. But when I lost my legs, God gave me everything back that sexual abuse took away from me. Can't you see this big, beautiful smile? Yes, 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 yes. So tomorrow, Friday, we will be on chapter 3. So you guys, subscribe to my video, share, like, leave me a comment, and you can purchase this book. All the links are under the video. You can even purchase my gospel CD, My Testimony. My testimony talks about how I went through everything. So the album is very, very good. And read my blog because they will inspire you and motivate you. I am the Legless, Amputee Beauty, and I am signing off. I love you once. I love you twice. I love you 3 times. And there is nothing you can do about it. Watch and pray for your children. Purchase my book on Amazon. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. If you would like a personal copy, an autographed copy, hit me up on all my social sites, and I will give you the price. And you pay me, and I will send you an autographed copy and mail it off to you. You guys have a good night, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow night. And thank you for listening. Good night.